Good morning. It's Tuesday, the 17th of December, and this is Govindraj Ethiraj, headquartered and broadcasting as well as streaming from Mumbai, India's financial capital. Our top stories and themes for the day. The stock market's dip as investors wait for a fresh round of cues. Gold frenzy grips Indian buyers and imports rise. Why the cancer diagnostics market is growing. And legend Zakir Hussain's unfinished agenda.
This is the Core Report with Govindraj Ethiraj.
The markets lose steam once again. Investors wavered as they weighed the lack of cues with the likelihood of markets staying strong thanks to the return of foreign portfolio investors who are clearly not there right now. But Asia was weak and that was sufficient cue to cause the markets in India to dip. The 30-share Sensex closed down 384 points at 81,748. While the Nifty 50 was down 100 points at 24,668. The broader markets were back in action with the Nifty Midcap100 ending higher by about 0.8% and the Nifty Small-Cap 100 ending higher by about 0.6%. Meanwhile, those who want to raise capital in India are continuing to show confidence. LG Electronics, one of the big ones, is thinking of increasing its valuation in its Indian unit to as much as $15 billion in a planned listing next year, thanks to investors and analyst feedback, according to Bloomberg. Interestingly, LG shares have dropped about 13%, that's the parent LG shares, in Seoul, leaving the company with a market value of $10 billion, according to Bloomberg, which means the subsidiary potentially would be worth more than the parent as it happens, and perhaps that's a good reflection of the Indian market's potential for its products and, of course, investor appetite. The earlier valuation targeted was apparently $13 billion. Bloomberg says a formal roadshow for LG Electronics IPO will start in the next 2 months, and they're looking at a listing in the first half of 2025, and they've already filed a draft red herring prospectus with the Securities and Exchange Board for India and could raise about $1 billion to $1.5 billion in that initial public offer. India's IPO market has, of course, been booming and some $18 billion have been raised, including a record $3.3 billion by car maker and another Korean major, Hyundai, or rather Hyundai's Indian unit. And this was as recently as October. Meanwhile, the net worth of India's two key billionaires, that's Mukesh Ambani and Gautam Adani, have dropped below the $100 billion mark in recent months, according to Bloomberg, which in turn comes amidst broader financial struggles in their core business, Bloomberg says. Mukesh Ambani's net worth, which stood at about $121 billion in July, is now about $97 billion as of December 13th, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. And this decline reflects challenges in Reliance's core businesses, including in the energy and retail sectors, which have underperformed, says Bloomberg. And Gautam Adani, who was once the world's second richest person, has seen his net worth drop from $122 billion in June to $82 billion in December, according to that same index. That decline follows a series of allegations and investigations that have shaken investor confidence in the Adani Group, says Bloomberg. But despite all of this, India's top 20 billionaires are still richer by $67 billion this year. India's gold frenzy. Speaking of billions and dollars, India's merchandise trade deficit in November widened to a record level thanks to a massive jump in gold imports while exports fell due to weaker global demand. Inbound shipments of gold climbed to a record high of almost $15 billion last month, more than doubling from $7 billion in October, according to data, thanks to a fall in global gold prices in November, which prompted many importers to ramp up inventories, says Reuters. Overall trade deficit in November stood at about $38 billion, according to data from the Commerce Ministry, but that was much higher than the economists' forecast of about $24 billion, according to a Reuters poll. So the deficit in October was about $27 billion, so you can see the rise. Analysts told Reuters that gold imports have been a major culprit in the overshoot of trade deficit, up nearly 50% year to date. And reasons attributed to high gold demand are, of course, the fact that import tariffs have been cut from 15 to 6%. This was in the union budget in June this year. And, of course, festival and wedding demand, which is right now. But the added factor is strong investment demand. India's merchandise exports have now contracted about 5% to $32 billion in November, while imports, like we said, increased by about 27% to about $70 billion. Meanwhile, the United Nations Trade and Development UNCTAD, in its global trade update earlier this month, said that the US likely becoming more protectionist, inward-looking industrial policies of many countries, a threat of renewed and expanded trade wars along the ongoing geopolitical tensions are set to negatively influence international trade in 2025. Meanwhile, the rupee declined to its weakest closing level on record on Monday thanks to a rise in US bond yields, weakness in the Chinese yuan, and weak merchandise trade deficit data, according to Reuters. The rupee closed at 84 rupees 86 paise against the US dollar, down slightly. That's about 0.1% in the day. Oil prices fall on weak Chinese demand. So oil prices have fallen thanks to a slew of economic data from China, which apparently is reinforcing concerns over weakening demand, according to Bloomberg, which also added that Brent is now near $74 a barrel, a little under that, after rising almost 5% last week. China's crude refining has now dipped to the lowest in 5 months in November, while apparent oil demand fell about 2%. Retail sales growth in China was also below estimates, says Bloomberg. Elsewhere, in other signs of slowing demand, spot rates for hauling crude on the large vessels from the Middle East to China, which is an important route, have dropped by about a third, or 30%, as demand in China slows and the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC Plus, delays the restart of idled supply. Analysts said that very large crude carriers have borne the brunt of this year's surprise slowdown in Chinese crude imports, and these VLCCs usually haul about 2 million barrels each. India's private sector output grows. India's private sector output grew at the fastest pace in about 4 months, according to preliminary readings from a survey that helped the economy end 2024 on a positive note thanks to sturdier demand in services and manufacturing and record jobs growth. Monday's HSBC's December Flash India Composite Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, compiled by Standard & Poor's Global, rose to about 60.7% this month, which was on par with August after dropping to 58.6 in November. This strength hasn't been seen since 2008, according to that release, when the global financial crisis hit, suggesting strong private sector expansion. Commodity news that could affect you. Well, if you're a chocolate lover, this is something you need to watch out for. Cocoa futures reached a fresh record in New York as the market once again reckoned with supply concerns. Prices for cocoa have jumped earlier this year thanks to weak harvests in West Africa, a major production hub. Adverse weather further threatens the region's farms, limiting the chance to rebuild already low global stockpiles, according to Bloomberg. The market for cancer testing. India's second largest pathology laboratory chain, the Mumbai-based Metropolis Healthcare, last week said it was acquiring the Delhi-based specialized cancer diagnostics player Core Diagnostics, valuing that company at about 247 crore rupees. So according to this deal, Metropolis will acquire 100% stake in the company through a combination of cash and stock. Now, super specialty tests contribute about 37% of Metropolis's revenue, and with Core's acquisition, this would increase to 41%, according to the Business Standard, while oncology tests account for about 4% of Metropolis's revenue, which will rise to 10%. Now, super specialty tests is obviously important to testing laboratories from a revenue and margin point of view, but what does that reflect in terms of changing health profiles of patients in general and specific? Or, more specifically, are there more cancer cases than before, or is it just a testing opportunity that's increasing? I put this question to Ameera Shah, the Managing Director of Metropolis Healthcare.
Definitely cancer is going up. There's no question about it. And globally, oncology and neurology are expected to be the fastest growing diseases in the next 10 years across the world, right? India is going to be no different. And therefore, you are seeing cancer cases going up significantly, but you're also finding that things that could not be diagnosed before, and now you're able to diagnose it as science is advancing and you're able to get better quality of testing that.
So tell me about oncology testing. I mean, how better or good is it today compared to what it was earlier? What does it mean to someone who suspects that they have some kind of cancerous growth in their body or tumor? And what could they do about it in the context of what you're doing as well?
So, just start with somebody who's perfectly well, right? And now there's this whole conversation around you can do predictive cancer testing where you can find out to a scan or a test and find out there's something going on in your body. And honestly, I don't think there's too much weight to that yet. The science around it is still a little bit wobbly. So I would not recommend people saying I can do one blood test and diagnose all kinds of cancer in my body. That's not scientifically true. You can go get a sonography done. You can go get, nobody does a PET as a screening mechanism for sure. But you certainly can get a sonography done. You can get a colonoscopy done every year or every couple of years. And I think those two are good sort of screening technologies, right? Now, let's say, assuming that you found some sort of a lump somewhere, and the doctor says, yes, this feels structurally like it potentially could be something, you then need to go and get a biopsy done. So the next step is actually to get a small piece of that tissue, and you then send it to a lab like ours to get a biopsy done. Now, people say, what's there in a biopsy? So many people do it. Now, we have to remember, biopsy is determined by the quality of the person who's seeing the biopsy because it's under the microscope. So it's not something as simple as a machine just automatically doing it. It's actually somebody using their expertise. So the way we operate is we have super specialists doing biopsy cases. There's not just a histopathologist. You have a subspecialist histopathologist, meaning somebody who's done only kidney biopsies, somebody who's done only lung biopsies, breast biopsies. So what we've done is we found docs who had expertise in a sub-organ, and therefore they've become an expert on that organ, and they are able to therefore pick up things that other people may not be able to pick up. So you first get the biopsy done, hopefully accurately. If you're finding that, okay, there is something there, then the doc will say, okay, now get a sort of a PET scan done. And let's figure out how much it's spread or where it's spread and, what phase it is, etc., what stage it is. And then they'll need to do surgery. Now, before you do surgery, you'll also need to do a bunch of blood biomarkers, cancer tumor markers. Some of these are like cancer CA15.3, CA19.9, etc., etc. They're all for different kinds of organs. Post-surgery, you'll also then, you're doing targeted therapies, you now can do oncogenomics to figure out which therapy actually works best on your body, most effectively on your body, what dosage should be given. Now, all of these are new things in the market. And therefore, with better testing, the treatment is actually getting far more precise, far more targeted, and far more focused. And that's where we are really seeing cancer care is actually advancing. And a lot more people are being saved.
Right. And tell us about the composition of your super specialty testing versus the non super specialty, or what I guess is the more run of the mill testing, which I'm sure a lot of people go and do every day. And how is that looking between 24 and 25? And are there any shifts within that?
So what Metropolis does is, we obviously, when we say run of the mill, means we are still talking about maybe one of the 20 labs in the country who do these kind of tests, right? So we probably already have a list of about 250, 300 varieties of cancer tests, which cover what in our world we call as the routine and the specialized testing. But in a common man's world, these are anyway very esoteric tests, right? So we were already doing all of these and we were providing services to oncologists across the country. Now with core diagnostics, they have brought in a super specialized and specialized category of tests, which are another 400-500 varieties of tests overall. And they have brought in these test parameters that we were not doing. So now end to end, from beginning to finish, you have everything under one menu. And the reason this is helpful, because somebody may say, okay, so what, I was sending it to Metropolis, I was sending it to core, what's the big deal now it's together? Because you have to remember, for a doctor, for a surgeon, actually dealing with one lab, where you're actually dealing for all test parameters about one patient's history, makes their life and their decision making much easier. Because the way it works is the doctor can call up the histopathologist or the cancer specialist in Metropolis and now talk about all the different tests and the history of that patient. And our doctor actually works with the cancer surgeon to help them actually make the best decisions. So this makes a big difference rather than information being in different pockets in different labs. And obviously, obviously, the quality and the guidelines and the kind of specialists we have in Metropolis, of course, are a level above everybody else.
What about non-cancer? What's that portfolio looking like in Metropolis as a whole? And is that changing, or do you see any shifts that are planned or projected in the next few months, year?
No, certainly. Look, we have about 4,000 varieties of tests in our menu, right? We pretty much do everything that you can get globally available. Our neurology portfolio is extremely strong. Our gastro portfolio, women and care, all of them, extremely strong. And I think we are anyway adding about 100 tests per year that we knew through R&D. And then we add it to our test menu. So the idea is to constantly stay innovative, cutting edge, and really bring all the tests that are available globally across the world to Indians. So that at no point of time anybody can say that Indians don't have access to the best healthcare, and certainly not the best diagnostics. So that's our goal, and that's always been sort of how we've stayed at the pioneering end of most of these things.
So give me an example of a test or two that you've added recently, and what does that reflect in terms of what's changing in disease profile or disease conditions?
See, for example, one of the tests which I really like is the hereditary cancer profile. So, for example, at this point of time, if somebody has cancer in their family, often cancers can be inherited. Some of them are not, but some of them can be inherited. And it's difficult to tell actually which ones have been inherited, which ones not. So the way to do it is actually when somebody in the family has got cancer, and assuming that they've survived, or even if not, and you've been able to figure out the mutation in their gene pool that has actually caused it. You are then able to search for those mutations in other members of the family for the inherited cancer disorders, right? And you're able to see if somebody is actually has a potentially trait or a propensity to that particular cancer again. So I'll give you a story of my own family where on my husband's side, his cousin, was diagnosed at the age of 30 with colorectal cancer, right? And when he found it, it was just by chance. And he had some symptoms. He got a colonoscopy done. And they found that they quickly did surgery on him. And he was literally, 25, 30 years old, right? But then we knew that there was a chance of this being sort of in the hereditary pool. And therefore, with his brother, we did exactly that. We checked all the sort of the mutations. And after that, when he found out that he had a propensity, he was getting a colonoscopy done every year. And in one of those colonoscopies, he actually caught again early, colon cancer. It just tells you how through this testing, it makes you more aware. It makes you more educated. And therefore, you're able to watch out for something and catch it early. And both of them are doing, perfectly fine today and have come through a very difficult phase in their lives. But they've come out healthy and surviving it well. So, I think there's a great boon for early testing, but assuming it's scientifically accurate. And therefore, I have a problem with these companies who commercially try to sell these things when they are not actually scientifically really there yet. So the stuff, obviously, that we are putting up on our test menu is scientifically stuff that we know is actually bang on cancer, science-wise, and is not going to be something just commercial.
Right. Last question. So if you are looking at other kinds of acquisitions or forays in, let's say, 2025, what would that be? Or what nature or what specific area would that be?
See, we've got currently two strategies that we're sort of pursuing. One strategy is what we've done many of. We've done about 23 of these acquisitions over the last 20 odd years, right? Where we've said that, look, let's go into a geography where Metropolis does not have a strong consumer brand. That could be a city. And let's find the leading player in that market. And let's find a way to partner with that leading player by doing a majority acquisition in that business, using that lab as a base in that city, and then growing in the peripheries from there. And what Metropolis brings to the table is we bring the wide test menu that we have, because most of these local labs only do 500-600 varieties of tests. So we bring our test menu to that city that makes it available for all the people living there. We go and connect with all the doctors to create education about all the different tests that are available. And that's how we continue to grow in that geography, right? So that strategy we'll continue to do in markets where Metropolis doesn't have a strong consumer brand, right? While this will be predominantly in North and East, there could be markets also in West and South where we don't have a strong, like specific cities. The second strategy is actually more new for us, and Core has actually fallen under that strategy, which is about acquiring scientific, innovative capabilities, which we may have on multiple other areas, but we may not have on a particular therapeutic segment. Like in this case, we didn't have on super specialized oncology. And to bring in that company under our umbrella and take those products and services and now distribute them far and wide across 750 cities and towns that Metropolis is present in. So Core brought three advantages to the table. One was, of course, the fact that it had all this advanced onco. But second, that it had a lot of its business in North and East, which of course is a non-core market for us. So these two were sort of strategic fits, I would say. And the third, that the financial valuation we are actually paying for it was very reasonable, because we are going to create actually majority of the profit pool in our company after acquiring it. So the second strategy would be similar.
Right, Ameera. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Govind. Always a pleasure to chat.
A percussion legend is no more. Zakir Hussain, whose dancing fingers made him perhaps the greatest tabla player in the world, has died in San Francisco at the age of 73 from complications linked to chronic lung disease, his family said in a statement. Zakir was nominated for 7 Grammy Awards, winning 4, including 3 this year, according to the Grammy website quoted by Reuters. He also received India's highest honor for performing artists, the Sangeet Natak Academy Award. Zakir was the eldest son of another legendary tabla player, Ustad Allah Rakha, and started his professional career at the age of 12. By 18, he was touring internationally and would go on to perform with the likes of Grateful Dead drummer Mickey Hart, cellist Yo-Yo Ma, jazz musician Herbie Hancock, and well-known guitarist John McLaughlin, according to Reuters. He also partnered with John McLaughlin on Shakti, and one person who worked with him and helped host the latest Shakti concerts, including the magical 50th anniversary tour concert in Mumbai in January last year, was VG Jairam, now running a company called Hyperlink Brand Solutions, a well-known live events company. I reached out to Jairam in Mumbai and discovered, among other things, that Zakir had a long and unfinished agenda, quite characteristic of performers like him who never tire. Jairam, thank you so much for joining me. You worked with Zakir for over 30 years, as you were pointing out, and you spoke to him or interacted with him just last month, or exactly a month ago, and you were looking for dates, as I understand, for the Mahindra Percussion Festival, which also suggests that Zakir was very much in the game and he wanted to perform and come and play.
It's all happened too soon and too suddenly that I'm sure that not only me, but the whole music world and everyone is in total shock. Because when I was talking to him, we were actually discussing the possibility of him, trying to work dates out for the Mahindra Percussion Festival that we were planning. And he was saying, let me see if I can figure out those dates in March. But he had to leave back in Feb, because he was also doing a tour with Bella Fleck in India, which was supposed to happen early Jan. And there were a bunch of dates he was doing in December as well. And in all of this, there was also a conversation that we were having with Sovik, who's Shakti's manager, and trying to put together a few dates because they were very keen to come back to do like a thank you concert, for all the love that they had received for the Grammy, which kind of completed the whole 50th anniversary tour. It's just too beautiful, because it started in India and we went on a world tour, and then finally, the crowning glory was, of course, them winning the Grammy. So all in all, that is what it was. But I never thought that would be the last I would ever speak to him. So it's really shocking.
You worked also with Shakti on that 50th World Tour, and one of those concerts was here in Mumbai in Jan last year. That's obviously almost close to 2 years now. So tell us about that concert, because I was there and it was an absolutely fabulous experience.
Yeah, just the fact that, it was Shakti coming back after so many years, and it was their 50th anniversary. So there was a lot of planning that went into it, and they were coming out with the studio album after almost 35 years, so that itself was a big deal. And John G coming together, Zakir Bhai, Shankar Mahadevan, Selva Ganesh Rajgopalan. There was a lot of magic that was taking place behind the scenes, because they put this whole album actually together remotely in COVID, and that's the beauty that eventually went on to win the Grammy. But what was very special also was the fact that, for the Bombay concert, I was lucky enough to be able to convince the legendary Viku Vinayakaramji, who was also one of the founding members of Shakti, to actually come and be part of the concert, and I know that there are enough and more videos which are on social media, which we captured them meeting each other after such a long time. And it was just magical. It was these three long lost friends, childlike. And that's the beauty of these giants, they just picked it up from where they left it. They were hugging and crying and kissing, and, it was just dancing. It was just magic, and I think I'm privileged to say that at the Trident in that room, just the musicians and all of us sitting down and jamming and chatting about so many memories, that they had, was magical. And of course, we all saw what Vikuji at his age did on stage. No rehearsal. He just straight came on and they just picked it up from where they were. So,
and he was 80 at that time.
Absolutely. He was 81 already. And what you could see is how beautifully Zakir Bhai got him into that comfort zone. And that's the person that he was, because he was not someone who was regularly playing, but he came out of that, performed with them. And I think Zakir Bhai gave him a beautiful intro, in terms of musically, and allowing him to do what he did and supported him so gracefully. And that is what he was. He was a wonderful man. In fact, we did Bombay, we did Delhi, we did Bangalore, and we did Calcutta, and sold out shows. And there's one anecdote I remember, and it is always used to be running joke. He would always tell me to make tea. He said, "Chai leke aao, chai banao." So and there's a particular way he would have his tea, so I would make that tea, and I remember giving him the tea in Calcutta, and he had that, and then he was very quirky. He had a great quirky sense of humor. And I asked him, I said, "Zakir bhai, was the chai good?" So he says, "Yaar, 50 paise ka kami ho gaya hai chai mein." So I said, "Okay, I'll try next time." And what happened after that is funnier because the concert got over, standing ovation, and all of that happened. This happened at the Calcutta Cricket Club. And when he walked down, he came to me and he said, "I hope you liked what I did." So I said, "Zakir bhai, sub was fantastic, but 50 paise ka fark reh gaya." So he actually boxed me and he said, "You got me correct." So, it was just one of those funny moments where he was very childlike. Yeah. So all that I can say is that he was a very emotional person, very childlike, and spoke from the heart and always celebrated others. And that was the beauty of it all. I have so many backstage memories with them, which are stories and which can go on and on. But it's just that he was a giant of a person, a giant heart. And of course, musically, we are nobody to even, say what he was. I can just say that I don't think there'll be another tabla player of his caliber ever again.
And he's obviously left a mark on many people. And for someone like you who's been in live entertainment in all its glory all these years in India, what is the one or two things that has influenced you personally in the way he's changed you or made you look at things differently?
One of the most crucial things, or the most important thing that I would say that we've learned from Zakir Bhai is discipline, and respect for others' times. There has not been a single occasion that I can remember in the last 30 years. We've run many shows together, whether it's corporate or whether it is festivals or concerts. He would never be late. He would always be early. He would respect everybody's time, his co-artist's time. And he was a stickler when it came for sound checks. And of course, he would be a pretty strict guy when it came to his sound check and would really drive sound engineer nuts till he got that sound right. And I think just the discipline of being there on time and ensuring that everything works as per how we want it, and would always ask everybody else to say that, "Is there anything you want me to do? Is there anything that I am not doing right?" He was very humble. Also, I would say helped us hone ourselves. In a sense, I would say, it's pretty much like Mr. Bachchan coming on time on a set. That's the guy he was. Discipline was his biggest, and that's something that I will always learn from him.
You brought him and MF Hussain together for a very interesting performance. MF Hussain painting and Zakir Hussain playing the tabla in Bombay.
It would not be right to say I brought them together. I was part of that event, and it was actually the Eskumar group, long back when they launched Reed and Taylor, the shootings. They did an event, and it was just that the curation happened. And a very interesting thing that took place almost 25 years back was a live performance by Zakir Bhai and a live painting to that music and his percussion performance by MF Hussain, which happened at Turf Club for a invitee audience. And it was magical. It was absolutely magical to see the two maestros on top of their game, really inspiring each other. And it was not staged, or it was something as a new concept. And that's another thing. He would always try out something new. So you see any of his musical experiments, he has played with so many people from across the spectrum of music. Whether it's Mickey Hart or whether it's Bella Fleck or whether it is Chick, like you name it, and he's there not only from the Indian perspective but also from the international perspective. So he was someone who was always experimental, always wanting to go there and figure out new stuff. And I'm sure that he's touched so many lives, so many lives. Like I was talking to Selva Ganesh and Shankar Mahadevan. They were in tears. They're broken. He meant the world to them, right? Because John G and Zakir Bhai, in a sense, were the members who took these into their fold and actually exposed them and took them around and have honed them into who they are. So that's the kind of emotion and joy that they've shared. So I think gone too soon is what I would say. Heartbreaking.
Jairam, I would entirely agree with you, and we will all indeed miss him. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you, Govind.
That was the Core Report with me, Govindraj Ethiraj. Do stay connected with more of our coverage at the Core. You can check out our website or sign up to our newsletter for our exclusive stories, one in-depth feature a day on www.thecore.in. Do also track us on LinkedIn, where we usually post synopses or extracts of our top stories and interviews. We would love your feedback on how we can make business more interesting and relevant, including, of course, India's vibrant manufacturing sector. So write to us at feedback@thecore.in, and thank you once again for listening.